We're missing Barry for quite a few days.
I don't think he was feeling too well. He wasn't at shul yesterday.
Okay. All right, we are holding the bottom line of Daf Samach Tes Amid Beis. We were talking about when you plant something in the ground a second time and there's a new growth, so do we go baser the original or do we take into account what is the new growth? So the Gemara says, Boy Rabba Inyan Meiser Mai. What would be the halacha by Meiser? So the Gemara says, Heichi Dami. What's the case? Kegayin, as we start the top of Daf Ayin Amid Aleph. Kegayin de Amdinu, you evaluated an amount of grain which you cut off the ground, v'asrinu, and you gave meiser from that which you harvested from the ground, and then v'shaslinu, and then you replanted it, v'isifalahu, and it grew more. So im tim tzalaimer, if you say like we said, lo'azlinon basar iker, that when it comes to a leniency, we don't go basar the original that you planted in, which was already tied, because that would be a leniency. The taisefes boy yisure, and that which grew more, you need to take off meiser. Do you have to re-tithe also the part that you already tithed when you planted it? Iker mai. What about the stalk that you put in the ground? Do we say that it was already tithed, or do we say that when you put it in the ground it starts new? Amalei Abaya, so Abaya says, "Ma'ishna b'kol chitei v'sari da'alma." That's what we do with wheat and barley. We take wheat and barley and we put a kernel in the ground, and that kernel is tied, but we start from the beginning. Amalei, so he says, no. Davar shezarei kala, where what we put in the ground disintegrates, loy mebayli. That's not a shayla. Elakika mebayli davar she'ein zarei kala. Like this stalk that just grew more, it didn't deteriorate in the ground. Mai. So the Gemara says, Tifshet lei mehadam Rabbi Yitzchak am Rabbi Yochanan, litra batzel shetikno. If you have a liter of onion that you tied, uzrai, and you planted it in the ground, misaser lefi kulai. You have to take off meiser now from the whole stuff that grows, even though the batzel is a davar she'ein zarei kala, it doesn't disintegrate. Says Gemara, yeah, because over there that's the derech. Hasam hainus ri'asei, that's the normal way. But hachalav hainus ri'asei, here it's not normal to take a stalk and replant it in the ground. Maybe what you tithe already remains tied. So now, the Gemara, it's not clear at first what the Gemara's question is over here. Amalei Rabbi Chanina bar Minyumi la'Abaya, otza she'enoi nokav mahu. Now the Gemara thinks it means, can you take meiser from one non-perforated flower pot on another? A non-perforated flower pot, since it's not connected to ground, is only drabana. So could you take it from one on the other? So the Gemara says, well, what's the shayla? Eloi nakav, if it's non-perforated, haloi nakav. So it's from a drabanan on a drabanan. Why not? It must be that your question is that you had a non-perforated flower pot, it grew, and then you perforated it. So now the addition is daraisa. Can you take meiser from one part or the other part? Or do we say, no, the part that grew earlier is only the Rabbana. The part that grew after you perforated is the Raisa. Dilma chazer nekavei ka'amrit. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a shayla. Because over there, when you made the perforation, the whole item continues to grow together. And since the whole item continues to grow together, so the whole item becomes biblically chayiv. So it becomes one entity and it grows more. So now it's a whole entity that grows with a perforation, so the whole entity is the Raisa. Hasam over there, stays Rias Ninu. You planted a stalk and it grew by itself. Now you replanted it, and there's an addition. The question is, do you have to re-tithe that which you tithed already from the first planting? The Gemara doesn't answer the question. But the Gemara has a new question. Boy Rabbi Avo, she boiled a stalk, shemercha bakri. You piled it up, and you smoothed it out, ushisala, and you replanted it. After replanting it, vikara aleh Hashem b'mechuber, and you declared it should be truma while it's still attached to the ground. Mahu, what's the din? No, it already became chayiv because you did meiruach, you smoothed it out before you planted it. Then meiruach, when you smooth out the pile, that's when it becomes chayiv and truma. Then you planted it. The question is, does planting it erase and start from the beginning? So the Gemara says, do we say, kevin the marcha tavlula? Once you smoothed it out, it became chayiv and truma. And therefore, kikara aleh Hashem kachala. And now when you declare it truma, it's kaidish. Or perhaps we say, kevin the shisala, once you replant it, pakalei tivla kamei. It starts over again. So the Gemara says, Amalei Rabbanan Labaya, Rabban say to Abaya, if you say that it remains tevel, and you could declare it truma, im kein matzinu truma b'mechuber l'karka, then you could have a case of truma that's attached to the ground. Now, everybody who's anybody knows there's no such a thing. Usnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Right? We learned in the Mishnah. It's interesting. You know, the expert, the Mesaris Hashah says that there's no such Mishnah. The really interesting Mesaris Hashas. You know, the Mesaris Hashas on the right-hand side gives us the source, you know. So you want to see, is it a Mishnah in Peah, is it a Mishnah in Kloyim? Right? So the Mesaris Hashas says that he hasn't found any such Mishnah. Not only hasn't he found any such Mishnah, he hasn't even found such a brisa. But anyway, but we know that there's no truma b'mechuber l'karka. So Vaya says, and it's interesting, the Gemara here uses a lashon of kitanya, which implies that it's a brisa, because otherwise it would say kitanan, which is a Mishnah. Kitanya hi. Where do we say that there's no truma? That means we know that if a zar eats truma, there's misa b'dei shamayim, and he has to pay a fifth, the principal and a fifth. Because there's no way that he could be chayiv. Why? Because if when he eats it, he pulls it out of the ground, then that's not mechuber. Talishu, it's not attached to the ground. And if he bends down and he eats it, that's shaloi kedarkai. And you're not chayiv for eating it. If Gedalia bent down and ate something from attached from the ground, that's even if he wants to do it. But l'daitalates a koladim, that's not considered an achila. Even if he does it and he thinks it's normal, everybody thinks they're normal, but it's a kalada. Says the Gemara, such a kind of eating when something is attached to its source is not considered eating? Why is this different than what's written on the notebook of Ilfa? This is very, very unusual. Because in those days, they didn't write things down. But Ilfa had a notebook. We know that a nevela of an oifatar has an unusual way of being metame. It's not metame on contact, it's metame when you eat a kazayas and it goes beis abliya and you swallow it, it's metame you and your begotten. Now what about the egg of a nevela of a tardika bird? So Maishna Medichsiva Pinkasa the Ilfa Beyas Nivla Sa'oifatar Miksasan Bachutz. Part of the egg is already outside of the chick, or Miksasan Bifnim, and part of the egg is inside. So Mibifnim, if Gedalia eats a kazayas of the egg while it's still inside the animal, the bird, it has a din like the bird, and it's metame begadim abeis abliya. Metame begadim abeis abliya. But b'chutz, the part that's outside, ain't metame begadim abeis abliya. So now for him to do this, he would have to bend down, go to the opening of the chick and eat it while it's inside the chick. And here you see that that's considered normal. So the Gemara says that's different. Talush, something that's detached. The egg is still detached. Avide inche da'achliachi. People will eat that way. B'mechuber, but something that's attached to the ground, they cut it off first. Loi avde inche da'achli. Now, Amarav Tavyumi bar Kisna Amar Shmuel has a reya kil oyim ba'otzes she'ein enokif. If you plant different seeds in a non-perforated flower pot, awesome. In other words, it's a derabana. It's not attached to the ground, it's not perforated, so it's not deraisa, but it's also derabana. So the question is, what's the chiddush? Amar Abaya, is he saying that we give you makis mardis? Makis mardis is rabbinical flogging. Rabbinical flogging. We don't have, Bezdin doesn't have teeth these days to do that. Some people deserve it. Some people misbehave very badly, and they deserve rabbinical. We don't have the teeth to do that. We don't have the permission. We're not Shriyan al Admasan. We don't have a Sanhedrin. But there is Makis D'Rabbanan, and it's called Makis Mardis. Makis for rebelling. So, Amar Abai Bishleimi Ashmin and Loike Makis Mardis Midrabbanan. Then Shapa, that's his Chiddush. Elo Asa, but simply to tell me it's Asa Midrabbanan, Mike Mashmalan, the Midrabbanan of Yisriya, that an otzis that's not perforated is rabbinical planting. Tanina, that's a Beferish Mishnah. Torah Mishe'enoi Nokiv ala Nokiv. If you took truma from a non-perforated pot for a perforated pot, so that's minaptur ala chiyuv. Truma, it is truma because midrabanan it's zriya, but v'yazav yitram. You have to take off truma because you did it minaptur ala chiyuv from that which is part of the rice of chiyuv. It must be, therefore, the Gemara says what he meant by saying aser is that there is indeed, if you plant diverse seed, there is makis mardis. Now, we know there are 5 grains. This is perfect right before Pesach. You want to get shmur matzah, you want to spend a lot of money, oodles of money, then buy spelt matzahs or oat matzahs. People that have allergies, You could spend up to $80 a pound for such matzah. There are people that have psoriasis that they only eat spelt matzahs. Very expensive. So hachit and wheat, vasayr barley, vakusman spelt, vashiboy shul, oats, vashifon and rye. Hari elu chayav b'chala. These are the 5 types of grain that are chayav and chala. Umitztar from zem, they combine with one another to give the minimum share of 5/4 of a kav and a little bit more. And these 5 types of grain, vasurim b'chodesh milufnei aimer, they are forbidden as the new crop before the aimer is brought. Umilik sir, and you're not allowed to harvest it milufnei Pesach, before Pesach, because right away, right after Yom Tov, we will bring the aimer. The crops that took root before the aimer matiran, the aimer on the 16th of Nisan, permits them to be used. Vim lav, if they didn't take root yet, asur and they're asur achiyava aimer haba, until the aimer of the next year. Now, Tana, kusmin min chitin, spelt is a species of wheat. Shibayla shul v'shifain, while oats and rye are min sa'ir. That's an interesting thing. Rye is a type of barley. Kusmin, you should know, is gulba, is spelt. Shifain is dishra, is rye. And shibayla shul is shibalei tala, is oats. So, but only these 5 are chayav and chala. Hani in, only these 5. Ayriz v'deichen loy, rice and millet not. Minani mili, how do we know this? The rice and millet are not chayiv and chala. Amrei shlokish asya lechem mimatzah. We learn out of Gzeir Shava lechem from matzah. Ksiv hacha, it says over here by chala v'haya ba'ach melechem aretz. When you eat from the bread of the land, you bring chala. V'ksiv asam, and it says by matzah lechem aini, the poor man's bread. So just like by matzah, it's only the 5 grains. So by chala. So the Gemara says, could you imagine we're learning this right before Pesach when everybody's going to buy matzah? It's really unbelievable. V'hasam gufa minalan. How do we know by matzah it's only the 5 grains and not rice and millet? Amrei shlokish v'chein tana d'bei Rabbi Yishmael v'chein tana d'bei Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So does it say in the Academy of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Amakra, the pasuk says, Lo yiseichel olav chametz. You shouldn't eat chametz. Shivas yomim teichel olav matzahs. 7 days you eat matzahs. Lechem only. Dvarim abam lidei chimutz. Only that which could become chametz. Adam yaitz bem yedei chavasa b'pesach. Yatsu elu, that excludes rice and millet. That does not leaven, rather it spoils. She'ein bam lidei chimutz, it doesn't leaven. Elu lidei sirchon, it spoils. Here you have the famous kasha of the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer asks, wouldn't it be better to have matzahs out of rice and millet? Because it can never become chametz. It's safer. Make rice and millet matzahs that can never become chametz. So the Chassam Sofer says that's the point. The point is that it represents the battle that we make sure that it doesn't become chametz. In other words, we're not a malach. A malach doesn't have a battle. But we have a battle. The idea is chametz represents the Yetzer Hara, and we should use something that could become chametz, but we make sure that it doesn't become chametz. Umitztar from zemzeh, and they combine one with another. Tana, we learned in a brayso, hatfu, a grain, v'akamochim, and flour, v'abetzekois, and dough, mitztar from zemzeh, combine one with another. So the Gemara says that's an enigmatic statement. They combine one with another for what? Lamai hilchasa, in regard to what? Amar Rav Kahana le'inyan chodesh. It combines as pertains to chodesh. That means that if you eat from the new crop before the Omer, you get malchus, and you get malchus even if you had a combination of grain and flour or grain and dough. Rabbi Yosef Amalinian chametz. it comes to tell you that you're chayiv chametz if you mix them, b'Pesach. Rapapa amalinian ma'aser sheni, that they combine in regard to ma'aser sheni if you eat it outside of Yerushalayim. The ochalei chutz l'chayma, these combine lucky. Rava amal le'inyan tumas oichlan. It comes to tell you that if these combine to give you the shear of a beya, that it should be susceptible to food contamination. V'akamash malan de tvua ukvachim, that grain and flour dumya de betzekas is like dough, that the only part of it is food. Ma'hasam uchla be'ena, you need the food itself and not the husk. Afachanami uchla be'ene, it has to be the food. The husk is not mekabel tuma. V'tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, chita, wheat, ben klufa, ben she'ena klufa, because the husk of the wheat is edible. So whether it's peeled, whether it's not peeled, it's mitzdarefes. Sa'ira klufa, mitzdarefes. Only peeled barley is mitzdaref. She'ena klufa ain't mitzdarefes. But non-peeled barley, not only does the peel not count, but the peel would act as an interposition that it can combine with any other food. Says Gemara Ini, is the peel not good? V'tanid bei Rabbi Yishmael al kol zera zerua asher yizoreya, that it's mekabel tuma when water moistens on anything that you plant. Kiderech shebnei adam moitzian lezriya, and it's mekabel tuma the way you take it out to be planted. Chita b'klipasa, wheat in its husk, sa'ira b'klipasa, barley in its husk, and adashim b'klipasa, and the lentils in there. So you see the husk is mekabel tuma. Says the Gemara, like kasha b'leichas, there it's moist. When the husk is moist, even if it's not edible, it's a shomer. And a shomer that guards it is also mekabel tuma. Habi yavashis, if it's dry and just withers and falls off, it's not a shomer. It's not mekabel tuma. Va'asurin b'chodesh milifnei Pesach. It's forbidden these 5 grains to eat before the Eimer. Minani mili, how do I know these 5 grains? Reish Lakish asya lechem lechem mimatzah. It says by the Eimer lechem, and it says by matzah lechem, so it's the 5 grains and not rice and millet. V'liktzar lifnei Eimer, and you're not allowed to harvest them before the Eimer. Minani mili, Rabbi Yochanan asya reishis mechala. Just like by challah, it's the 5 grains, so also you're not allowed to harvest it before the Eimer is these 5 grains. Now, my koidim la'omer. What does it mean that you can't have the new crop before the omer? Rabbi Yaina omer koidim ketziras omer. You can't have the new crop before you harvest the omer. But once you harvest the omer, it's permitted when the 16th day starts, even before you bring the omer. This was like that opinion that we said, ad etzem hayoyim hazeh is ad v'lo ad b'chlal, even at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and the bringing the omer is only a mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi bar Zavda omer koydem avoyas omer tanan, or koydem avoyas omer. It's only permitted before you bring the omer. Says Gemara tanan, asurin b'chodesh lifnei Pesach. It's Asurin b'chodesh, no, that's the wrong guess. Asurin b'chodesh l'fnei ha'omer. It's forbidden to eat the new crop before the omer. V'liktzar l'fnei ha'Pesach, and to harvest it before Pesach. So bishleim l'man yom koydem avoyas ha'omer. So the eating is before bringing of the omer, and the harvesting is before you harvest the omer. That's why it says it in 2 stanzas. That's why it doesn't mix them together. But according to the Mandiyama that you're allowed to eat it only until before the harvesting of the Aimer, it should put them together. Ella, the Gemara says, Itmar Asefa Itmar. In other words, everybody agrees that you can't eat it until you bring the Aimer. Ella Itmar Asefa Itmar. Im Ishvishu Kaidem LaAimer, if it takes root before the Aimer, Ha'aimer Matiran, the Aimer permits it. My Kaidem LaAimer, when does it have to take root? Does it have to take root before the harvesting, or could it even take root before the bringing? So that is machlokes Rabbi Yainai Kaidem Avos Aimer before the bringing of the Aimer, while Rabbi Yossi Bar Zav Aimer Kaidem Ketziras Aimer before the harvesting of the Aimer. We want to welcome in Saba, Mel Zachter, Marshall Castle, who is a Yisachar Zvulun, as you heard, Yaakov Warman, Yisrael Fisher, Irving Fishbaum, Itzi Fuchs, Baruch Ian, Shalom Fogel, Mo Kushner, Itchy, Dr. Black, Menachem Yamansky.
Great-grandfather.
Oh, Mazel Tov to Dr. Black on being a great-grandfather. Mazel Tov, a boy or a girl?
Chris will be in Yis Hashem on Sunday.
Should be Zeichel Achnisa L'Brisa Shel Avram Avinu Bizmanai, and Mitzvah Hashem, Dr. Black should be gesund for the Chasana. We welcome in Michal, Nachman Chapler, Gabriel Epstein, Moshe Lehman, Stephen Holtzman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Shimon Klein, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Abe Arbach, Rebel Yafi, Danny Vogel, Yeshutman, Shelley Zeitlin, Rabbi Krantz, Richard Rosenzweig. We learn for Shalom Dov Ben Pasha. We are dedicated Leil Nishmas Yaakov Zeb Ben Yodaya, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef Ben Sion Ben Yaakov Zeb, Lefu Shalema for Moshe Arya Ben Miriam, for a great shidduch for Chayat Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel, a great shidduch for Bati Bas Sarah, Leil Nishmas Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKain, Lefu Shalema for Liba Bas Anya, Lefu Shalema for Yosef Shmuel Ben Miriam, for a great shidduch for not a great shidduch for healthy mommy and healthy baby for Leora and piece ripped off the children of Elza Rivka. They should have healthy mommy, healthy baby. Also, we learn for the safety of our troops and the safety of everybody in Eretz Yisrael. Here it is. Riel and Lior Bas Elza Rivka. And everybody should have a wonderful evening.